You're not being dramatic, are you? A sentence that sounds harmless, yet it's the kind people use to erase your effort while smiling. If you've ever been dismissed or pushed out of something you built, keep reading Leah's story. Jessica's text had been annoyingly bubbly. Don't be late, sis. Mom's making that roasted garlic chicken you love. And wear something nice. Derek's bringing his parents. I should have ignored it. I should have claimed a migraine, a deadline, food poisoning. But some residual guilt, or maybe curiosity, had tugged me back to the two-story home in suburban Portland, where I hadn't spent the night in over a year. It was the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and the house smelled like rosemary, lemon, and the illusion of normalcy. Candlelight flickered across polished surfaces. The dining table was set like something from a lifestyle blog. Gold-rimmed plates, linen napkins folded like origami swans, wine already poured. I stepped inside, smoothing the sleeves of the navy blouse I only wore when I needed to prove I was put together. My mom, Diane, descended from the kitchen in pearls and soft smiles. "Leah, you're here. You look rested." Jessica bounced up behind her, pink satin headband in place, cheeks flushed with excitement or effort. It was always hard to tell. "You made it. I was worried you'd flake again." I forced a smile. "Just running late." Busy, Leah," Dad said from behind the newspaper, as if I'd just walked in from high school, not from a freelance client meeting that had run overtime. "Still juggling those design projects?" "I work in UX," I said. "Right, computer stuff." He folded the paper slowly, deliberately. "Well, it's good you can do it from anywhere. That kind of freedom isn't for everyone." The dinner started harmless enough. Chicken, mashed sweet potatoes, a fancy salad no one touched. Derek arrived halfway through, greeting everyone with a perfect blend of warmth and self-awareness that made my stomach tighten. He met my eyes briefly. "Leah?" "Derek." I nodded once. "Cool." He turned to Jessica and kissed her cheek like a man trying to prove he belonged. For a while, conversation revolved around the wedding. Venues, colors, the honeymoon in Costa Rica. I tried to disappear into the cranberry sauce. Then, as the plates cleared and dessert hovered in the wings, Diane reached across the table and placed her hand over Jessica's. "Sweetheart, your father and I have a little something for you. An early engagement gift." Jessica's eyes went wide. "What?" "Mom, you didn't have to." William picked up from there. "We've decided to transfer the condo to your name, the one Leah's been living in. It's time you had some stability." I blinked. Jessica gasped. "Wait, the condo? Really? Like, mine? Diane smiled, sipping her wine. "You're starting a new chapter. We thought it was only fair." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "What?" William turned to me, tone gentle but firm. "You've always been so independent, honey. Freelancing, traveling, not really rooted. We figured Jessica could use a base, with the wedding and all." "You're giving her the condo?" My voice was quiet, dangerously so. Derek shifted in his seat. "It's not like we're throwing you out," Diane said quickly. "You can always stay with us while you figure out your next step." I stared at them, then at Jessica, who was still trying to grasp what just happened. She looked too thrilled to hide it. "Oh my God, thank you. This is insane." I set down my fork. "Did you even look at the ownership contract?" William chuckled. "Leah, I co-signed the mortgage. That gives me equal say. You're not being dramatic, are you?" I couldn't feel my hands. My skin was cold, my spine rigid. The room hadn't changed temperature, but suddenly everything was sharp. The clink of glasses, the way Derek avoided eye contact. How Jessica now had my home and my ex-fiancé in one evening. No one noticed when I stood up. No one stopped me. I left my jacket draped over the chair. Outside, the air smelled like wet leaves and betrayal. I climbed into my car, fingers stiff as I unlocked the screen. I tapped open my messages and typed, "Do you still have the red contract copy from 2020? I need to check something." The keypad blinked red. The doormat was gone. And when I knocked, a man I'd never seen asked if I was delivering food. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at him. He looked like someone who worked in marketing. Mid-30s, expensive sneakers, earbuds still in one ear, a protein shake in the other hand. "Can I help you?" he asked, shifting his weight. I swallowed. This was my place. He blinked. "Oh, I just moved in yesterday. Rented through StaySpace." He stepped back slightly, suddenly wary. "Jessica Morgan, right? She listed it. I signed a 4-week lease." Jessica, StaySpace, 4 weeks. I looked past him. My shelves were gone. The wall art I'd picked from a vintage market had been replaced with pastel prints that screamed curated aesthetic. The throw blanket I'd kept since college, gone. In its place, some chunky knit monstrosity that looked like it belonged on a Pinterest board. The keypad had blinked red. My access had been revoked. I didn't even say goodbye. I turned around and walked back into the morning drizzle. My shoes soaked through instantly, but I kept walking. The cold Portland air needled through my coat. A layer of mist clung to the trees, the kind that turned everything a little blurry, like the world was smudged. I pulled out my phone and tapped Ivy's name. She answered on the second ring. "You're calling earlier than expected," she said. Her voice, always calm, cut through my spinning thoughts like the back edge of a blade. "Did they pull something?" "She listed the condo on StaySpace," I said. "There's a stranger living there. I couldn't even open the keypad." Silence on the line, then a sigh. "Tell me she didn't sublet it." She did. Ivy didn't curse. She never did. But I could hear the sharp inhale, the pause as she recalibrated. That's a problem, and a gift. "How is this a gift?" I asked, stepping under a bus shelter. My fingers were shaking, but not from the cold. "They couldn't legally sublet without your written consent. I inserted that clause myself in the co-ownership contract. Remember? Section 6C, exclusive decision rights on third-party occupancy." I closed my eyes. I did remember. Barely. I'd been so exhausted at the time, so overwhelmed by closing costs and inspections and the fine print that came with letting my parents help with the mortgage. Ivy had insisted on a layer of protection. "In case," she'd said. They must have forgotten. Or worse, thought I wouldn't notice. I watched the traffic pass on Burnside Avenue, cars crawling through the fog like they were trying not to wake the city. "I want to handle this carefully," I said. "I'm already drafting a notice," Ivy replied. "No letters, no lawsuits, not yet. I want this to be strategic." A beat of silence. "You're going quiet?" "I'm going surgical." She didn't ask more. That's what I loved about her. She trusted me to fight in my own way. Not loud, not wild, but exact. "I'll pull the docs. You might want to go back and check if your mail is still there, or any personal effects." I nodded, forgetting she couldn't see me. "Thanks, Ivy." I hung up and stared at the water collecting in the creases of my palms. They didn't just lock me out. They repurposed my home like I was a placeholder, a chapter they could rewrite. I walked for a while, letting the mist soak my hair and clothes until my skin felt numb and my thoughts weren't so jagged. When I finally got back to my apartment, no, her listing now, I didn't go up. I didn't need to see what else had changed. I sat in my car, turned on the seat heater, and watched my own windows from a distance. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. It was Ivy. Subject, read contract, joint retention clause, notarized attachment, PDF. The little preview icon showed the scanned header of the document, a stamp, a seal, and a signature I knew too well. My father's, from 2020. I didn't smile, but something inside me clicked into place. Not rage, not relief, just readiness. They thought I wouldn't show up, that I'd stay quiet like always. They forgot I had documents. The condo still smelled faintly like my vanilla sage diffuser, but the scent was layered now. Cheap champagne, too much perfume, the artificial warmth of a party thrown to distract from its foundation cracking underneath, string lights draped over the curtain rods. A hand-lettered welcome sign on a letterboard stood on my bookshelf. Jessica and Derek's new beginning. Someone had added a tiny heart next to Derek's name. I fought the twitch in my jaw. I walked in through the front door like I still owned a key. Because I did, metaphorically and legally, literally. Voices softened around me. Music dimmed. Conversations trailed off like someone had unplugged the night. Then Jessica's voice rose, all bright and brittle. Leah? Wow. Didn't expect you, but welcome. She was wearing one of my old wrap dresses. Or maybe it was a knockoff. Same color, same style. Only hers had been shortened, as if tailored to fit a different narrative. Derek was next to her, his posture stiff, hand half raising in greeting, then falling to his side. He looked like a man realizing he'd stepped into a different story than the one he'd rehearsed. I smiled, not too wide, not too cold, and walked farther in. The coffee table was different. My reclaimed wood desk, the one I'd built from scraps in grad school, had been moved against the wall and turned into a drink station. Guests loitered in little groups, champagne glasses hovering, eyes darting between me and Jessica. Oh, we repainted, Jessica chirped, following me. Tried to brighten things up. It feels more Jessica now, don't you think? I said. I ran a hand along the edge of the hallway mirror. Mine. Interesting interpretation of ownership. Her smile dimmed. I crossed to the corner where my old record player used to be, replaced now with a Bluetooth speaker pulsing ambient beats. Derek trailed behind us silently. I turned, standing on the slightly raised platform that once held a bookshelf and now hosted a tub of ice and Prosecco. I cleared my throat. I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to clarify a small, probably overlooked detail. Jessica blinked. Now's probably not this condo, I said, louder now to the crowd, is still legally co-owned. Silence. A woman near the drinks coughed. Someone else stepped away from the conversation circle and started recording. I saw Ivy's name pop up on my phone. ETA, 8 minutes. Want me to bring anything? I held up a manila folder. This is the original ownership agreement, signed 3 years ago. Includes a clause prohibiting subletting or occupancy transfers without dual written consent. I flicked to another page. And here's the addendum. My father signed it the week after closing. Legally notarized. Joint retention clause. Jessica's mouth opened, then closed. William and Diane, standing near the kitchen, looked like porcelain cracked under heat. Still holding their wine, but unmoving. Derek stepped forward. Leah, let's not do this here. We can talk. Outside. You didn't just help her move in, I said, gaze locking with his. You helped her push me out. Again. A sharp murmur rippled through the room. One of Derek's friends lowered his glass. I didn't, he started. But you did, I said, voice level. And now I'm making sure the legal record matches the actual one. I reached for my phone and held it up. The screen glowed with Ivy's last message. My legal rep is en route. I recommend you delay the cake. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I just laid out the paper they all forgot existed. The silence in the condo stretched so taut it felt like one word could snap it in half. Jessica blinked like her lashes might shield her from legal language. Derek's hand dropped from her back. William set down his glass. Diane didn't move at all. Her fingers frozen around the base of a champagne flute like it was the only thing tethering her to the room. Then the doorbell rang. 3 slow knocks, one after the other, echoing through the space that used to be mine. Jessica looked toward it, then at me. I invited someone, I said calmly. The door opened before anyone could move. Ivy stepped in like she'd been there before. She hadn't, but she carried herself like the walls knew her name. Dark tailored coat, leather folder under her arm, low heels that didn't click so much as declare. Her hair was pulled into a knot so tight it could have filed a motion. She looked around once, appraised the temperature, and nodded slightly toward me. Right on time. I murmured. She stepped into the center of the living room. A few guests took subtle steps back. One woman near the hallway started recording again. Ivy opened the folder with deliberate calm and held up the top page. This is the original co-ownership agreement for this property, recorded in Multnomah County. Clause 6C clearly states, all financial decisions, occupancy arrangements, or property usage modifications must be co-signed by both primary owners. She passed a copy to Derek. His fingers curled around it like it might burn. Jessica Morgan is not listed as an owner, Ivy continued. The listing on StaySpace and subsequent lease is invalid and constitutes a breach of contract. Jessica stepped forward. I didn't know that clause was in there. Nobody told me. You didn't read it, Ivy replied, voice still even. Jessica's face flushed. I just thought, you assumed, I cut in, that I'd moved on, that I'd just let it go. Derek cleared his throat. We honestly thought you weren't coming back. You didn't ask, I said. My voice wasn't raised, but it landed heavy. People were no longer pretending not to watch. The music had died completely. Outside, I could see mist gathering along the edge of the balcony, as if even the air was pausing to hear the outcome. Ivy lifted another document. This one bore a heavier seal, the kind that took pressure to press into the paper. This is a supplemental addendum signed by William Morgan on July 18, 2020, she said, her eyes never leaving the room. It waived any future authority to independently alter ownership or occupancy terms. The signature was notarized. Here. She turned it to the crowd. The name sat neatly at the bottom, William Morgan. Dad's lips parted. I thought that was temporary. You said... I said it protected me, I said. You agreed. You even called it a smart move. I just didn't think you'd forget it when you tried to overwrite me. Jessica opened her mouth again, then closed it. Her gaze darted toward Derek, who now stood rooted to the floor like he might sink into it. Ivy turned to me. Would you like me to proceed? I nodded. She pulled 2 more documents from the folder. This is a cease and desist, addressed to Jessica Morgan. It prohibits any continued occupancy or representation of the unit as hers. Jessica flinched as Ivy handed it over. And this... Ivy passed the second document to the man standing just behind the kitchen island, the one in gym clothes who'd opened the door to me a week ago. Is a 72-hour notice to vacate, per Section 8.2 of the original agreement, which prohibits subletting without mutual consent. He looked utterly stunned. I just rented it. I'm not holding you responsible, I said gently. But you'll need to find another rental. This isn't your fault, but it's not your space either. He nodded slowly. I get it. I turned to the room. This isn't revenge, it's correction. The murmurs grew louder. Some guests were clearly enjoying the spectacle more than they should. Others shifted uncomfortably, gripping their glasses like they'd wandered into the wrong party. Diane finally spoke. We're family, Leah. We could have discussed this privately. You didn't treat it like family when you listed my home without asking, I said. Then William's voice cracked. You're tearing this family apart. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd once told me I was his clever girl. The one who'd said co-signing was a gesture of faith. Who'd taught me how to balance a budget but never expected me to use those skills against him. No, Dad. You just didn't think I'd ever fight back. I had the keys, the title, the clear deed, but I had no desire to go back. The condo was quiet again. Sunlight filtered through the half-open blinds in long, slanted stripes, catching on dust motes that floated like they had nowhere urgent to be. The walls, scrubbed of pastel art and vinyl decals, had returned to neutral white. The silence felt less like peace and more like something unfinished. Or forgotten. I stood just inside the threshold for a long moment, hand still on the doorknob. The echo of my own breath unsettled me. For 3 years, this space had been my start, my independence, my control. And for 1 week, it had been a theater for betrayal I hadn't seen coming. I stepped into the kitchen, dragging my fingers lightly along the quartz counter. My name was now the only one on the deed. Ivy had finalized it 2 days ago. The joint mortgage had been dissolved. The bank had refiled the ownership under me alone. I passed the breakfast nook. The photo hooks were still in the wall. The little brass ones I'd measured out with painter's tape and stubborn precision my first weekend living here. They were crooked now. Someone had tried to hang heavier frames on them. They left it intact, Ivy said from behind me. She was leaning against the entryway with a reusable coffee cup in hand, hair loose for once. No damage. Clean floors, no passive-aggressive notes taped to the bathroom mirror. Impressive restraint. You want to repaint? We could bring back the dark green accent wall, or a mural. She was trying to be light, but her voice carried something behind it. Not pity, just awareness. I shook my head. Number, I'm leasing it. She blinked. Seriously? I nodded, walking past the living room into what used to be my home office. The outlet covers were still labeled from when I tested surge flow with a multimeter. A nonprofit reached out after the article. They run transitional housing for women leaving controlling or dangerous family situations. I'm letting them use it rent-free for a year. Ivy smiled slowly. That's very on-brand for you. I don't want to turn this place into a monument, and I don't want it to be a grave either. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I already knew who it was before I looked. Jessica Morgan, R.E., still family? I opened it only to skim. Guilt, defensiveness, blame hiding under soft punctuation and phrases like, "You've made your point," and "You could have handled this privately." One sentence stood out near the end. "You've destroyed the family." I moved the message into a folder I'd labeled simply, "Closure." No reply, no venom, no second read. Ivy wandered into the living room, stopping at the corner where the bookshelf used to be. You sure you don't want to live here again? It's yours now, fair and square. That's exactly why I can't. I walked over to the hallway closet. Inside, against the back wall, stood the last thing I'd forgotten. My degree, still in its black frame, slightly dusted from neglect. I pulled it out carefully, wiped the glass on my sleeve, and stepped back toward the living room wall. I took down the empty nail that used to hold a canvas quote Jessica had hung during her short reign. Then I replaced it with a new plaque Ivy handed me from her tote. Ownership is earned, not given, and never stolen. I leveled it with my hand. It sat flush, dead center. Ivy watched me for a beat, then nodded. You done? She asked. Almost. We walked back toward the front door. I gave the place one last glance, the kind you give a chapter you've read enough times to know by heart. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Derek Bishop. I didn't press play, but the transcript preview filled the top of my screen. I'm not proud of how it happened. If you want to talk... I deleted it. No reaction. No hesitation. My mother sent a letter. Not to explain. To justify. I read it twice. Then I did something I never used to do. I said no. Outside the window, flakes fell slow and steady, like the sky was trying to cushion the world. The cafe smelled like espresso and steamed oat milk, and a toddler somewhere behind me kept squealing every time a car drove past with snow on its roof. I sat across from Ivy, nursing a lukewarm matcha I hadn't touched in 20 minutes. Her laptop was open, but she wasn't looking at it. She was watching me with that quiet, calculated stillness she used in court. Well? She asked, setting her mug down with a gentle clink. I handed her the envelope. It was thick, cream-colored, handwritten in Diane's looping script. She took it carefully, like it might leak something onto the table. Anything I should know? She asked. She says she only wanted to protect Jessica. I replied. She says Jessica's always been fragile, and I've always been strong. Ivy raised an eyebrow. She meant it as a compliment, I added, then looked back out at the snow. but that's the problem. They think strong means I can be used, that I'll always recover, that I'll carry the weight so Jessica never has to. Ivy reached into her bag and pulled out a thin manila folder. The nonprofit moved in yesterday. Single mother, 2 kids. One of them's learning to code, apparently. I smiled despite myself. Then it's finally being used right. We didn't say anything for a while. I scrolled through my inbox. The letter Diane sent had been transcribed into a follow-up email, her attempt to bridge the gap between old-world formality and modern damage control. I'd already written my reply. 1 line. Strong doesn't mean disposable. I clicked send. Ivy glanced down at her screen. You want to come to the next workshop? Women in Tech Mentorship? You don't have to speak, just be there. I thought about it. I might. We stepped outside together. The snow had begun to stick, turning sidewalks into soft chalk outlines. Ivy's phone buzzed, and she nodded once before walking off with a quick, "Text me later." I pulled my scarf higher and started walking. It wasn't far, just a few blocks to nowhere in particular. The kind of walk you take not to get somewhere, but to leave somewhere else behind. As I passed the bookstore, I paused, eyes catching on a display about resilience. The window glass reflected the quiet outline of my face, older than last year, maybe not softer, but sharper in all the right places. The memory came sudden and sharp. Grandma Rosa handing me my first toolkit, silver and purple, wrapped in tissue paper. "Fix what they broke," she'd whispered. "Build what they never gave you." And I had. I stepped off the curb. The snow crunched faintly under my boots, soft and solid at once. "Excuse me," a voice called behind me. I turned. A girl, 20 maybe, stood there in a puffer jacket and oversized beanie, cheeks pink from the cold. She looked nervous but determined. "You're Leah Morgan, right?" she asked. "You spoke at the workshop last year? You said, 'Quiet doesn't mean weak.' That stuck with me." I met her eyes and smiled. "Good," I said. "Keep it?" The ones who tried to erase her never expected she'd redraw the map entirely, on her own terms. In the quiet aftermath, she didn't demand an apology. She redefined the lines they crossed. Justice, when written in ink and resolve, speaks louder than any apology ever could. Like roots growing beneath a cracked foundation, truth doesn't need permission to take hold. Sometimes reclaiming what's yours begins with refusing to disappear. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a fight, a quiet win, hit like to show you're not alone. Leave a comment and share your turning point, or just a word for someone still fighting theirs. And if you're drawn to stories where justice finds its voice, subscribe, because more truths are waiting to be told.